Everybody, welcome to the show. Around the Nation, right here, TYT Nation. I'm your host, Jeff Waldorf. Got a good show for you guys today. Lots of stuff. We got Rex Tillerson with his non-announcement announcement and subsequent ass-kissing of the president. We have Ivanka and Donald Jr. I guess it's sort of an old story, but there's some updates to it of where the time where Ivanka and Trump almost got felony charges. That's actually very interesting. Then we're going to talk about the news on Facebook and the ads bought by, of course, the Russian troll farms. That's interesting. Then we've got the UN voting to ban the death penalty for gay people. But there's one country that seems to be missing from this vote that actually voted against this ban. We're going to go through that and what company that's in. Then we've got, of course, fun Republicans being hypocrites, getting abortions. Well, not getting abortions, but urging your mistresses to get abortions. And then we've actually got some great news, more electoral victories for Bernie Sanders backed and Our Revolution backed candidates. So that's awesome. All right. And before I get into it too, I do want to address something that I saw earlier today. Jordan Sheridan and his cameraman were arrested earlier in St. Louis for apparently standing on a bridge that they weren't actually standing on. Kind of bullshit. So, you know, hopefully they release him without charges. It was a bullshit reason he was arrested. And it's indicative of the police state that we have in America, that you can't even film a protest. Not even take part of a protest. Just film it. Just be a journalist. And actually do what you're supposed to do and film things that are happening. And you can still get arrested for that. What happened to the First Amendment? What happened to the First Amendment? We seem to be really protective of the second, but what about the first? The freedom of the press. But anyway, like I said, I hope that they let Jordan out soon. They should have never arrested him. Let him out. Given him an apology, because this is unacceptable for police to go and arrest the press for covering an event. So that gets me very irritated. And again, I hope the situation gets resolved and they get Jordan out of there. Because again, in this cameraman, because there's no reason, like I said, they should have been arrested at all. Okay. Anyway, with that said, I do want to thank some patrons. So let's go over here a little bit and go to Patreon. I want to thank Ben Newmark, Indie Dude, Stefan Pereira, Jared Steele, Jason Hulbert, Stacy O'Nell, Ashuman Vanit, Paul Doland, Kyle Hensherich, Trisha Kano, Goperi Salman, Kim Luck, Decrepit Progressive, Amaranth Aber, 71, Dennis Cloutier, I don't know if I said that right. Let's see, a couple of more patron shout-outs here. Steve Lipke, Hawkinson's, Tom Anderson, Kay Jordan, Roger Holden, and Seth Baker. So thanks to all those people who support us on Patreon. If you want to support us, patreon.com/TYTNation. And if you don't want to go with the Patreon route, but you still want to support the show, well, number one, you can always like and share our videos. That helps us tremendously to get more eyeballs on our content. That's, again, that helps us out the most. But you can also, if you want to help monetarily and don't want to go the Patreon route, you can always use the YouTube Super Chat. And that elevates your comments. So I will keep my eye on the Super Chat. And if there's anybody who makes a comment that you want elevated, that you want me to see and read out on air and help the show at the same time, you can use that. So that's pretty cool. You can also get a hold of us through our Twitter at TYT Nation, or use the hashtag TYT Nation on Twitter. So, all right. In fact, let me get to that here. with that said, we're going to go into the stories here in just a moment. Oh boy, it looks like they're still in jail. So that's horrible. So again, bad news. When journalists get arrested in America for the crime of journalism, that's bad. Okay. Anyway, let's start out with that Rex Tillerson. All right. Now, there's a recent NBC News article that claimed that there was some drama going on behind the scenes between Rex Tillerson and President Trump. Now, it claimed that key Trump administration officials had to urge a furious Rex Tillerson not to resign over Trump's speech to the Boy Scouts. So, again, Tillerson, I guess, was a former Boy Scout, and he's a little angry. Now, Tillerson, like I said, very mad over that speech, and had to be, according to the article, talked down by Vice President Mike Pence, along with Trump's then Homeland Security Chief John Kelly and Defense Secretary James Mattis. Now, Pence reportedly begged Tillerson to remain at least until the end of the year. Now, according to the report, the Secretary of State also referred to the president as a fucking moron a few days earlier during a meeting with key cabinet officials. Now, if that is true, well, then he'd be absolutely correct. The president is a fucking moron. And as you're going to see, he actually doesn't necessarily, he doesn't even deny it. Now, earlier there was a press conference where Tillerson went out and kissed ass and completely denied these reports. In fact, I want to show you some of that right now.
Let me tell you what I've learned about this president, whom I did not know before taking this office. He loves his country. He puts Americans and America first. He's smart. He demands results wherever he goes, and he holds those around him accountable for whether they've done the job he's asked them to do. Accountability is one of the bedrock values the president and I share. While I'm new to Washington, I have learned that there are some who try to sow dissension to advance their own agenda by tearing others apart in an effort to undermine President Trump's own agenda. I do not, and I will not operate that way. And the same applies to everyone on my team here at the State Department.
Is that the only thing that you consider to be erroneous in that article?
I think it's the most important element of the article is to reaffirm my commitment to this role that President Trump's asked me to serve, and to dispel with this notion that I have ever considered leaving. I have answered that question repeatedly. For some reason, it continues to be misreported. There's never been a consideration in my mind to leave. I serve at the appointment of the president, and I'm here for as long as the president feels I can be useful to achieving his objectives.
Could you address the main headline of this story that you called the president a moron? And if not, where do you think these reports or
I'm not going to deal with petty stuff like that. I mean, this is what I don't understand about Washington. Again, you know, I'm not from this place, but the places I come from, we don't deal with that kind of petty nonsense. And it is intended to do nothing but divide people. And I'm just not going to be part of this effort to divide this administration.
Okay, so now some of you might see that and just see Rex Tillerson pushing back against, you know, fake news. Well, what I saw was him getting cucked by the president hard. Oh no, Trump, you know, one thing I didn't know when I got into the White House is that Trump is a very smart person and he likes America. Really? You didn't know that? Well, I guess, I mean, he didn't exactly present himself as a very smart person and certainly not very patriotic. I would say that he still does not present himself that way, but that's just my opinion. But no, this was straight up ass kissing. Oh, Trump, he's so smart. He's just such a great leader. And look, I didn't call him a moron. In fact, I'm not even gonna address the fact that I was quoted in the story as calling the president not just a moron, but a fucking moron. No, that's petty. I'm not even going to talk about it. Now, all this is that this was a public loyalty pledge. He is reaffirming his loyalty to President Trump. It's exactly the kind of thing that President Trump wants to hear, especially if you might be a little bit on thin ice. So, and it's because, of course, he is on a little bit on thin ice, and he wants to stay in his position. He wants to keep his job. Now, he is not the only person that has ever threatened to resign. So, I mean, for example, Jeff Sessions. Jeff Sessions, he's still there. But at one point, he nearly gave his own resignation, but then was, again, stopped by different members of the cabinet. So people have resigned or almost resigned from this administration, having to work with Donald Trump. Apparently, it's very, very difficult to work with Trump. He's a little bit of a diva, turns out, and he's also kind of an idiot. But look, these people also realize, after they're talked down by different members of the administration, notice how Mike Pence has pretty much stopped all the major ones. He helped stop Jeff Sessions from leaving. He reportedly also helped Rex Tillerson, helped stop Rex Tillerson from leaving. So Jeff Sessions, Mike Pence has been very, very instrumental in talking people down after Trump pisses them off. So, but the reason that they remain, of course, is like I said, they want to remain powerful. They want to remain relevant. In order to do that, well, you've got to make sure to once in a while appease the baby by kissing his ass. And that, of course, was exactly what he was doing. That was a giant blowjob to Donald Trump and will likely make him very, very happy. Now, there is one more thing that was very interesting, right? Is that the source to the NBC story was anonymous. Now, I wonder who one of those sources might be. And it got me thinking, wait a minute. So, like, who is the kind of person that would leak on the administration? Steve Bannon. Come on, who else could it be? Again, he was in the administration. He's not in the administration anymore. He doesn't get along with Rex Tillerson. Doesn't get along with pretty much any of the other establishment figures, okay? It's got to be him. Now, that's my own speculation, so, you know, don't take that as fact. That is speculation, but boy, wouldn't it make sense. I mean, look, Bannon, he's not shy about attacking people he disagrees with and people he thinks that are enemies of Donald Trump. In fact, he said, I'm going to war with the Trump campaign or with the Trump White House to get the establishment figures out because he thinks that the establishment has taken over the White House. And he's like, no, I'm not having it. I'm not having it. Trump's our guy. He's like me, but he's surrounded, boxed in, caged in by members of the Republican establishment. That establishment I want to destroy. I want to break it up. So I'm going to go to war with him. And I'm going to leak all the information that I had heard while I was serving in the administration. It's perfect. It's perfect. It wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all if a lot of these leaks are the work of Steve Bannon. Again, I cannot confirm that. I do not know that. That is my speculation. But again, maybe I'm onto something. Now, as for Rex Tillerson, I got to tell you, this was an embarrassing display. But I'm sure that it did what it was intended to do, and I'm sure that Donald Trump just ate it up with a spoon. Because, again, it was intended to appease the baby. And once you appease the baby, then your job, for the most part, unless you keep fucking up, is fairly safe. Okay, anyway. Let's move on here. Now, there's a new report about... Hold. Now, there's another... I cannot get this right today. So there's a new report out about some of the business dealings between of Donald Trump and... Damn, I cannot do this today. I am having a brain fart day. All right. So there's a new report out about some of the business dealings of Ivanka Trump and Donald Trump Jr. Now, it turns out these two Trump children were actually working on a Soho development project. Now, this project almost got them in a little bit of trouble. See, they were very close to being indicted in 2012 on accusations related to the Soho project that they had misled prospective buyers about certain units within this project. Now, this is from a ProPublica investigation. They found that attorneys in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office spent about 2 years building a case against Ivanka and Trump Jr. Now, this case included emails showing that the Trumps knew that they were basically lying to potential buyers in order to, of course, get them to invest in the condo. In fact, in one email, according to 4 people who have seen it, the Trumps discussed how to coordinate false information that they had given to prospective buyers. In another, according to a person who read the emails, they worried that a reporter might have been onto them. And yet another, Donald Jr. spoke reassuringly to a broker who was concerned about the false statements, saying that nobody would ever find out. Obviously, people found out. That's why I'm talking about it right now. But nobody will find out because only people on the email chain or in the Trump organization know about this deception. And again, this is according to somebody who claims that they have actually seen these emails. Now, they are not actually released yet, so we're going off secondhand information. I understand that. But this is true. And look, this did happen. This case actually did happen. They did sue the Trumps, as I'm going to get into. The new part about this story is the emails. Okay, so look, what this shows is that, oh look, here's the Trumps trying to lie to make more money for themselves. Surprise, surprise. That family has pretty much shown already that they're shameless liars. So this is very easy to believe. Like father, like son, like daughter, apparently. In fact, one source familiar with the emails told ProPublica, quote, they knew it was wrong. There was no doubt that they approved, knew of, agreed to, and intentionally inflated the numbers in order to make more sales. So let me give you some more details about this case. Now, this whole thing, as I said, has to do with the Soho development deal. Now, what they did is that they basically built a condo slash apartment near Soho, not actually in Soho, very near. And it turns out they ran afoul of some zoning laws where they couldn't actually build like permanent condos. So it had to be something that you would buy, but you couldn't live in. I know, it's basically a hotel room that you could only stay a maximum of 120 nights per year. So, which is, again, super strange, right? Now, this is, again, because of where they decided to build it and their zoning laws. Now, interestingly enough, and it doesn't have too much bearing to do with the story, but I thought I'd, kind of point it out anyway. The two business partners on the Soho deal happen to have been Soviet-born businessmen Felix Sater and Tevfik Arif, who ran the Bayrock Group, another real estate development firm. Now, anybody who's watched the show knows I've talked a fair bit about Felix Sater. This is the guy who was who spent a year in prison for money laundering and also stabbed a guy in the face with a martini glass, with the stem of a martini glass. Very, very classy guy. So he was also part of this development deal. But that's, of course, the only thing that has to do with this actual thing. Now, what they were found doing was lying to prospective buyers about how many rooms were actually being rented out. In fact, in April 2008, the Trumps said that 31% of the condos in the buildings had been purchased. Donald Trump Jr. boasted to the Real Deal magazine that 55% of the units had been bought. In June 2008, Donald Jr. and Ivanka, alongside their brother Eric, announced that 60% had been snapped up. Quote, we're in a very unfortunate position where we have enough sales, and now we are strategically targeting certain buyers. Unfortunately, of course, none of that was true. It was all bullshit. It was all lies. And this is according to a sworn affidavit by by a Trump partner filed with the New York Attorney General's office. By March of 2010, almost 2 years after the press conference, it was found that only 15.8% of the units had been sold. Now you might be thinking, okay, so what's the deal here? So what? Yeah, they puffed up their numbers a bit. That's dishonest, but it can't exactly be criminal, right? Well, according to the law, the deal hinged on selling at least 15% of the units. By law, the sales can't close with anything less. If they do, the Trumps and their partners would have had to return the buyers' down payments. But wait a minute, they got 15.8%, right? So they barely make it. They barely made it. They're fine, right? Wrong. Some buyers had concluded that they had been cheated. See, these are the people that were lied to. In August 2010, some sued the Trump Organization and others involved in the project in New York federal court. They said this action seeks to address the substantial and ongoing pattern of fraudulent misrepresentations and deceptive sales practices by the Trumps and the other defendants. The plaintiffs argued that there was a vast difference in value between a unit in a building that is 15% sold and one that is 60% sold. Their complaint accused the sellers, including the Trumps, of a consistent and concerted pattern of outright lies. Oh my God, the Trump family, people in the Trump family, lying to people to get money? No, say it ain't so. Yeah, of course, that's their MO. That's how they make their money, by lying to people and screwing people over and also not paying people. If you're not surprised, then I hear you. I'm not surprised either, but I figured I would still talk about it anyway. Now, because this goes into a corruption angle that is very interesting. Now, after that civil suit was filed, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office opened a criminal investigation. They don't normally do that. In fact, prosecutors are very wary of getting involved in a dispute between wealthy litigants. But in this instance, according to a person familiar with their thinking, the lawyers in the Major Economic Crimes Bureau quickly concluded that there was enough to warrant a criminal investigation. They believe that Ivanka and Donald Jr. might have violated something called the Martin Act. Now, that's a New York statute that bans any false advertisement in conjunction with the sale of a security or real estate. Prosecutors also saw potential fraud and larceny charges, applying a legal theory that by overstating the number of units sold, the Trumps were falsely inflating their value and, in effect, cheating unsuspecting condo buyers. So that's, of course, where the felony charges came from. So, look, to me, it's fairly obvious the Trumps cheat people because that's what they've always done. Okay, they're not the first to be cheated, these condo buyers, and they're obviously not the last. So what happened here? So why weren't they actually convicted, brought up on these charges, and, put in prison? Well, to get to that part of the story, we go to the Manhattan DA's office. Now, the DA at the time is a man named Cyrus Vance Jr., and I believe he's still there. Now, Vance happened to have been up for election around the time this lawsuit was going on, and this investigation was going on. Now, what does that have to do with any of this? Well, that same year, Trump attorney Mark Kasowitz decided that he would donate $25,000 to Vance's re-election campaign. Not only that, but after he had donated the money, he went and asked Vance to drop the case. That's fairly clear. And let me read a bit from ProPublica here. Now, on May 2016, 2012, Kasowitz visited Vance's office at 1 Hogan Place in downtown Manhattan. Dan Alonzo, the chief assistant district attorney, and Adam Kaufman, the chief of the investigative division, were also at the meeting, but no one from the Major Economic Crimes Bureau had attended. Kasowitz, when he was there in the meeting, did not introduce any new arguments or facts during his session, basically saying the same thing that the lawyers for Ivanka and Donald Jr. were saying during the case. So they had that meeting, and Kasowitz had donated $25,000. So what happened? Well, Vance, 3 months later, overruled his own prosecutors and said, we're going to drop the case. Huh. He just didn't drop the case. Doesn't that look a little suspicious to you? Oh, it just happened to be a political donation, and then 3 months later, I dropped the case. Now, he said, he talked to ProPublica, and he said, I did not at the time believe a reasonable doubt that a crime had been committed. I had to make a call, and I made the call, and I think I made the right call. I needed about 25,000 reasons to make that call. Now, to be fair, he did return the $25,000 before the meeting, but there happened to be a later donation of $50,000, which he did keep. Now, that occurred less than 6 months after Vance dropped the case. When confronted with this information, according to ProPublica, Vance pledged to return that donation as well, saying that it would not be a millstone around the neck of his office. So basically, he got caught with his hand in the cookie jar, taking money for dropping this case. The case is already dropped. But he's like, oh, well, I'm not going to let that be a millstone. I'll give it back. Sure you will. Now, in a statement to the news agency, Trump's lawyer, Kasowitz, said the donations, they weren't quid pro quo for anything. No, of course not. He turns out he's just a very big supporter of Mr. Vance. In fact, that's what he said, according to a statement. I donated to Cy Vance's campaign because I was and remain extremely impressed by him as a person of impeccable integrity, as a brilliant lawyer, and as a public servant with creative ideas and tremendous ability. I have never made a contribution to anyone's campaign, including Cy Vance's, as a quid pro quo for anything. Integrity. You want to talk about integrity, right? You gave him money, and he then overruled his own prosecutors that were building a very solid case for 2 years. Now, and if you're to believe this, it was reported that Kasowitz, when they dropped the case, allegedly boasted to his colleagues about representing Ivanka and Donald Jr. Now, according to two people, he said that the case was, quote, really dangerous, and that it was amazing that I got them off. If that's true, if those accounts are actually true, then that's disastrous. Now, obviously, we don't know, but looking at this case, it seems to be a clear case of corruption. You give me money, I drop the investigation. Blatant corruption, right? So, two things I get from the story is that New York obviously has some very corrupt institutions. And the Trump and the Trump family, well, they're full of serial liars who try to screw people over to make an extra buck. So what happened to the Soho anyway? Well, it didn't work out. Like a lot of Trump businesses, it went bankrupt. And the lawsuit that happened afterwards, the civil case, the Trumps ended up having to give 90% of the money back to the people who had bought the condos that felt that they were defrauded. So they still ended up having to give back the money because it was found, like I said, that they were defrauded. Look, the thing about this is that it kind of does also show the two different tiers of the justice system. Now, if it were you and I that screwed people over, out of their money, especially rich people, oh boy, we'd get the entire library thrown at us. But if you were rich and powerful and you put money into the right hands, well, then it turns out you might get away with almost anything. That's what's so gross about this and really indicative of what's wrong with America. Okay. All right. So let's go to the next story here. Facebook. Now, the investigation into the Russian government's use of Facebook ads has revealed a number of those ads were targeted in two very important states, Michigan and Wisconsin. Now, I, of course, am from Michigan, so that kind of would impact me, you would think. Now, this is according to 4 sources with direct knowledge of that situation, and it was published in CNN. They report that some of the ads appeared highly sophisticated in their targeting of key demographic groups in areas of the states that turned out to be pivotal, according to these sources. So I'm just reading this off. The ads, they say, employed a series of divisive messages, including promoting anti-Muslim messages. The sources did not specify when in 2016 the ads ran in Michigan and Wisconsin. So look, that's what we know from the report. And there's some other tidbits of information in here as well. But let me start off by saying that the corporate media is making a huge deal out of this. But let me show you how it's not as big as a deal as they're actually making it. Now, this is obvious that this is part of the propaganda campaign. Now, I've said before that the Russian government did use propaganda to try to influence the election. In my mind, there's no doubt here. That in itself is not a new revelation. And I'll, back that up by pointing out how countries all over the world, especially us, use propaganda all the time to influence other people's elections. In fact, we had a former president, Barack Obama, interfering in the French election, helping the so-called centrist, he's more of a center-right politician, Emmanuel Macron. And guess what? He won the election as well. We interfered in that election. Again, we had a president go over there and support him. So we interfere, they interfere, everybody interferes with each other, okay? All to their own ends. So why are we surprised that in this case, the Russian government essentially copied us and said, okay, we're going to interfere in your election now? Well, we've done it before, right? Now, the question here is, did Russia receive help from the Trump associates and where to buy the ads and how to interfere? That's the main question here that the Mueller campaign is trying to find out. Again, we know governments interfere, but if they have insider help from a campaign, well, then that's what makes it different, okay? Again, that would be collusion. That would actually also violate campaign finance law, as these ads would be an expenditure from a foreign government. You could put a monetary figure on this, in this case, over $100,000 in Facebook ads, which is barely a drop in the bucket when it comes to total campaign spending, especially in this election, but nonetheless, it would be enough to break campaign finance law. Now, the other question is whether or not this had a gigantic impact. Now, my argument is no. The argument from the Democratic Party and some of the people looking into the Russia investigation are absolutely yes. Again, I will disagree with that. Now, some of you might be saying, well, come on, man. Of course it had an impact. Look at who won. Look at how close the numbers were in both Michigan and Wisconsin. I hear you, man, but let's break this down a little bit. So the claim is that these ads were on, which were on divisive topics like guns, abortion, gay rights, and immigration, influenced voters to vote for Donald Trump. Now, my argument is I think a lot of these people, based on those issues alone, had already made up their mind about who they're going to vote for. I mean, for example, if you're an anti-immigrant person, you're going to vote for Hillary Clinton? If you hate gay people, you're going to vote for Hillary Clinton? Come on, man. No matter how bad Donald Trump is going to seem, if you're somebody who's traditionally voted Republican and has certain beliefs, then you're always going to vote for your team. And in this case, Donald Trump was Team Republican. There are very few people that cross the lines. Yes, they can be important, but that doesn't necessarily mean that in this case, they handed the election to Donald Trump. Now, speaking of immigration, as I mentioned before, one person with direct knowledge of the matter said that some of the ads were aimed at reaching voters who may be susceptible to anti-Muslim messages, even suggesting that Muslims were a threat to the American way of life. Such messaging could presumably appeal to voters attracted to Trump's hardline stance against immigration and calls to ban Muslims from entering the United States. Again, so basically these ads were like, hey, remember, the Muslims are dangerous. Oh, there's a candidate out there who actually also thinks the Muslims are dangerous. You think those people were going to vote for Hillary Clinton and they see this anti-Muslim ad and were like, you know what, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump? No. Donald Trump's all over the TV. He got millions and millions of dollars of free advertising during the election. Everybody knew where he stood on Muslims. They were going to vote for him anyway. So that's why I'm saying that these ads likely didn't have a hugely pronounced impact. Now, more on the Muslim thing. Representative Adam Schiff said the committee was planning to investigate ads that suggested that Muslims supported Clinton. Well, you wouldn't see them supporting Donald Trump. But I think I know what they were going for these ads. Oh, it's the terrorists that support Hillary Clinton, not just the Muslims. Okay, so not only that, but it said how those were, they were looking into how those ads were geared to people who had been searching online for the Muslim Brotherhood. Again, that's a big right-wing boogeyman, right? And other items to suggest that they were critical of Islam. Now, being critical of Islam, that's fine. I make fun of Islam because I don't believe in it. I think it's bullshit, like all religion. So you could say that I'm critical of Islam. That doesn't mean I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. Okay. That's not typically a progressive thing. A progressive thing is I'm going to challenge you on your ideas, but I'm not going to completely hate your expression of your religion unless it does things that are against human rights. For example, you force somebody to wear a burqa. No, I'm not down with that. You force somebody to, hate gay people. No, I'm going to be against that. But if you're practicing your religion and you want to go on your prayer rug, I don't give a fuck. It's all about how you address the people and what they actually practice in their religion. If you're practicing shit like jihad, obviously we're going to be against that as progressives. If you're practicing killing people in honor killings, we're going to be against that as progressives. But if, like I said, you want to grow out the beard, perfectly fine. Anyway, other topics. Gun control, right? Now, look, if you're somebody who thinks that the Democrats, the liberals, are coming to take your guns, well, then you're not going to vote for a Democrat, especially Hillary Clinton. So I don't know how big of an impact that would have as well to switch people, who were considering voting for Hillary Clinton over to Donald Trump. Now, racial issues. Now, this one's interesting, too. Now, CNN reported last week that at least one of the Facebook ads bought by the Russians during the 2016 presidential campaign had made a reference to Black Lives Matter and was specifically targeted to reach audiences in Ferguson, Missouri, and Baltimore, according to sources with knowledge of the ads. Now, my guess is, if you're a very racist person, well, then you're more likely to vote for a Republican. You're more likely to vote for Donald Trump. Not saying that all Donald Trump supporters are racist, obviously not. But I think a lot of racists still voted for Donald Trump. Look, my point is, I think most of the people had already made up their minds. It's not like nobody knew who Hillary Clinton was. It's not like nobody knew who Donald Trump was or where they stood on the issue. These ads seem targeted towards people who had already made up their minds and who were mostly right-wing. Now, let's be fair and say that a lot of these ads also were not true. Now, Hillary Clinton was right when she said she has a massive right-wing conspiracy, of a smear campaign at her. Yes, she does, absolutely, and we've called those out. I mean, Alex Jones called her a demonic lesbian. You got to be kidding me. That's some of the ridiculous bullshit that they said about her. Progressives, we don't buy into that stuff because we actually believe in facts. Now, our problem with Hillary Clinton, and I've said this before, she's too right-wing, right? And I think that she wasn't progressive enough, and I think she wasn't genuine enough, and we couldn't trust her to enact the policy. She could say one thing, like, oh, I'm totally against fracking or oil, I'm going to shut down the oil companies or something like that and make them pay their fair share. And then later on, say, oh, that's right, we cut, I said that, but I'm actually going to cut taxes for giant corporations like the oil companies and deregulate and push fracking. Oops. That's what progressives were afraid of. As for some of the Clinton-supporting liberals, I think that a lot of them fell into a complacency trap. Now, think about Michigan, right? That's where I live, and, I've drove around the state, and not once did I see a Hillary Clinton sign. Not once. There was no excitement for Clinton here, as far as what I could see. More importantly, I think that alongside the lack of excitement, I think that there was this belief among Hillary Clinton supporters that she could never lose. And that Trump could never win. And I'm assuming, thanks to that a lot of people who supported Hillary Clinton or, were like, oh, we don't really want Trump, but he'll never win, so I'll just stay home. Like, I don't really feel excited about voting for Hillary Clinton. Someone else will, you know, vote for her. And a clown like Trump could never win. Well, we see what happened there. And it was sort of the same problem among Hillary supporters that plagued the Hillary campaign. And it's, of course, the hubris. Not only that, but look, man, you talk about Michigan and Wisconsin. Well, you got to remember, she didn't even campaign in those two states. She didn't go there. She didn't excite voters. She basically ignored them. This is all while the Russian government was out there riling up gullible conservatives to go out and vote for Trump. And people were much, much more excited to vote for Donald Trump than they were for Hillary Clinton. Now, part of that is because of the fact that Donald Trump was something new and he was change, and he promoted himself as part of the establishment, but also because of some of his very hateful positions had made conservatives go, yes, this is the guy. This is the guy that we want. He hates Muslims and blacks just as much as I do. But as I said, I don't necessarily think the Russian interference is why Hillary Clinton lost. Again, these conservatives, most of these people were already anti-Muslim, already anti-Hillary, and they were going to vote for Donald Trump anyway. What we should be talking about is what Clinton could have done to bring more voters out for her in these swing states. I mean, no doubt she had more voters overall. She did win the popular vote by about 3 million votes. But thanks to our system, the way that it's set up with the Electoral College, is you've got to win places like Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. And she just didn't have enough support there. She was wrong. Her models were wrong, and her political consultants were wrong. The margins were so incredibly thin. And I know the fact that the votes were so close makes the argument for Russian propaganda actually having an impact, actually makes that a stronger argument. But again, I disagree with that. I don't think it has as much of an impact as they say they do. If it were anyone but Hillary Clinton, I don't think it would have been this close. Add in the fact that I think that there was also massive GOP voter suppression, thanks to Chris Kobach, thanks to interstate cross-check in a lot of these states. And here's your result. 4 years, at least 4 years of Donald Trump. So yes, there was a Russian propaganda campaign. That doesn't change the fact that the reason she still lost is because she was a very vulnerable, weak candidate. Not because she was a woman, not because of sexism. I mean, sure, there's a chunk of the electorate out there that is incredibly sexist. I mean, you can't deny that, just like there's a chunk of the electorate that's racist and Islamophobic. Well, those people would have never voted for Hillary Clinton anyway. It's not like a Russian ad convinced a sexist to vote against a woman. That's ridiculous. No, they were going to vote that way anyway. No, she lost because she stood for the status quo. And she was a symbol of in the face of the political establishment. That same establishment that is crushing them. I mean, if you go issue after issue, people are progressive. But it also turns out that they hate standard politicians because they don't trust them. They can't stand them. Trump was not a standard politician. And look, people did want to change, and they wanted someone who at least tried to act like a normal person, or a real person, I should say. Now, Trump, he's real, all right, but he's also a real fucktard. But at least you knew who he was. Hillary Clinton, too polished, too under the direction of her political consultants, not real. And you didn't trust what direction she was going to go in. And if you did, you pretty much knew that she was going to go in a corporate establishment direction. So, and of course, she wasn't allowed to be a real person either. And that's one reason that a lot of people like Bernie Sanders. He was authentic. And right now, authenticity is a currency like gold. Even if you're an authentic asshole like Donald Trump, hey, at least you're authentic, right? But the whole point is of this whole story is that, yes, again, the Russians did propaganda, but you can't forget that Hillary Clinton still lost, largely because of Hillary Clinton, and no amount of Russian propaganda can change that fact. Okay. I know that was a bit long, but I'm just giving my perspective on the election again. Now, let's go to something new here. All right. Now, the United States recently voted against a resolution to ban the death penalty for being gay. You have heard that correctly. The United States voted against a resolution to ban the death penalty for gay people. Now, this is a United Nations resolution that banned the death penalty for homosexuality. Actually did pass, with 27 countries voting in favor of the measure. Now, the resolution was brought forward by the countries of Belgium, Benin, Costa Rica, France, Mexico, Moldova, Mongolia, and Switzerland. These are all countries who have apparently made global LGBT rights a priority. Well, good on Mongolia, man. I had no idea. Now, according to Renato Sabadini, director of the International Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Trans, and Intersex Association, he said, quote, "This is a monumental moment where the international community has publicly highlighted that these horrific laws simply must end." Okay. Now, he also says that it is unconscionable to think that there are hundreds of millions of people living in states where somebody may be executed simply because of whom they love. Now, again, thankfully, this passed. However, there were 13 countries who opposed the UN human rights measure. One of them is the good old US of A, the supposed leader of human rights in the world, but apparently not. We, of course, joined 12 other nations in thinking that these laws were apparently incredibly okay. Now, these countries are Egypt, Bangladesh, Botswana, Burundi, China, Japan, Qatar, Ethiopia, India, Iraq, the United Arab Emirates, and our good old friend Saudi Arabia. Apparently, we're in great company. I am a little surprised to see Japan there. But again, when you look into Japan, they're actually a very culturally conservative country, despite all the weird sex stuff coming out. But hey, look, I'm not judging on that. I'm just saying, I'm going to judge them on their vote, which was obviously wrong, but not on the sex stuff, because that's always fun. Anyway, but look, other than Japan, I think a lot of these countries are very fundamentalist religious countries. Well, there's a lot of Muslim countries who apparently think it's super fine to kill gay people, and some even do, like Saudi Arabia, for example. I mean, they give people the death penalty for sodomy. That's horrible. Now, there are some defenders of the USA's vote in this saying, well, yeah, but we still have the death penalty, and all we're doing is protecting our right for the government to kill people. It's a strange argument to make, but okay. Let me debunk that. Now, for one, the resolution doesn't call for an end to capital punishment altogether. However, it does ask member nations not to use it in what they call a discriminatory manner. That's including against minors and pregnant women, or for blasphemy and consensual same-sex relations. Now, something stood out there, the word discriminatory, right? Well, if we were to sign that, then we would be admitting that, oh, right, we do human rights abuses. Because guess what? We use the death penalty discriminatorily, okay? For example, we've put mentally ill African Americans to death, knowing that they were mentally ill. And by mentally ill, I mean people who were very, very low IQs, who didn't necessarily know or grasp the gravity of what they were actually doing. These people are literally mentally handicapped. That's different. Mentally ill, by the way, not the same thing as insanity. So those are two different legal definitions. Insanity, you actually cannot be put to death for pleading insanity, which is strange. At least that's what I read somewhere. Now, the thing is, I don't believe in death penalty whatsoever, so I don't care about the distinction. Okay? That's why I didn't necessarily look it up. But look, if you do believe in the death penalty, well, would you be okay with executing somebody who's too mentally ill, who's not smart enough to realize what they're doing? I don't know. I know that I would not approve of that because, again, I'm against the death penalty in all cases. I don't believe you can find justice in killing someone. That's just, but that's me, right? But regardless, this vote wasn't even about that. It was about not killing people, gay people, for being gay. Now, I know we don't do that in America, and thank God we don't. But why are we not supporting this ban? Why did we vote against it? I mean, we don't do it, So we're not trying to protect ourselves here. So shouldn't we be leaders on this issue? Are we not supposed to be the leaders on human rights? And I say that right now, we have given up our moral authority. We no longer have that moral authority. We are no longer leaders in the world on pretty much anything, except if you're counting the military and supplying weapons to the world. We're definitely leaders on that, and we're definitely leaders on war, okay? But the thing is that, again, we've given up our moral authority, and frankly, I don't think we've had it for a very long time. I mean, just look at the way that our criminal justice system works against minorities. Look at the way that we treat people who are in poverty, the way that we treat Native Americans, the way that we treat people who need health care, who can't afford it, right? Our treatment of refugees and immigrants. We do not have the moral high ground. And because of that, we decided that it would be great to join with Saudi Arabia in voicing our support as a nation for the wholesale slaughter in other countries of gay people. Or at least saying, oh, we're not going to get involved. America, what the fuck? We can do better. So let's do better. Ugh, it's insane. This was a very frustrating story and vote to see. All right, so let's move to something a little bit more fun for the last two stories, okay? We're going to do a fun story, and then we're going to lift you up with a great story about electoral victories. So, okay. Now, Representative Tim Murphy is a very pro-life conservative. He says, he focuses on the family, and he says, hey, man, if you get pregnant, well, you shouldn't be allowed to get an abortion because, well, that's obviously it's killing babies. I'm very, very pro-life. I'm very pro-family. And so I'm going to dictate that what you're doing is wrong. Wonderful. In fact, he's so pro-life that, and he's such a good Christian, that he had been supported by the National Right to Life Committee. That is until they found out that he was not such a good Christian and actually got caught having an extramarital affair. Oops. Now, generally, I don't care about that. You do you, right? Or apparently do your friend and psychotherapist or whatever she was, right? Or your secretary or whatever. Okay. Now, the next part is that affair ended up in a pregnancy. That's a double oops. Again, not my business. I don't really care. That's your business, right? Now, it is kind of funny, and the reason that we do this, it's funny when these supposedly uber Christian people, conservatives, get caught with their dick in someone else's pants. Again, it's not very Christian of you, but again, whatever, right? But here's where I do have a problem. See, it gets hypocritical when you call for abortions, but then you ask your mistress to get an abortion. And that's exactly what happened. Now, this is according to text messages obtained by the Post-Gazette. Representative Murphy did have this affair. She did get pregnant, and he's like, oh, go get an abortion. Now, Murphy first admitted to having an affair with Shannon Edwards. Now, Shannon Edwards is a forensic psychologist and had been a personal friend. Now, he admitted this last year. He said, quote, last year I became involved in an affair with a personal friend. This is nobody's fault but my own, and I offer no excuses. To the extent that there should be any blame in this matter, it falls solely on me. Well, yes, it does. Now, privately, during the affair, Edwards had texted this to Murphy in response to one of his pro-life articles he put on his page. Quote, you have zero issue posting your pro-life stance all over the place when you had no issue asking me to abort our unborn child just last week when we thought that was one of the options. Oops. Murphy responded to the text by saying, I get what you say about my March for Life message. I've never written them. Staff does them. I read them and winced. I told staff, don't write anymore. I will. Oh, I see. Okay. It wasn't me. It was my staff. I'm not a hypocrite. What are you talking about? I mean, I read them and oh man, I got really upset and I told my staff not to do it anymore. Yeah, sure. Blame your staff, right? Well, actually, maybe you should blame your staff. Your staff is what got you in trouble in the first place. No, this guy is a hypocrite. Total and complete. I don't believe that for a second. And I don't think you do either. But look, again, this guy's a super hypocrite. And apparently he's also a terrible boss. Which doesn't really have anything to do with it. Except that maybe that's how he gets into trouble with his dick. Employees have accused Murphy of creating a hostile work environment and engaging in an ongoing and ever more pronounced pattern of sustained inappropriate behavior. This is according to a memo allegedly written by Susan Moserchuk, Murphy's chief of staff. So not only is he a hypocrite, but he's also an asshole. Wonderful. So of course, it makes all the sense in the world that he's going to, after getting his mistress to abort his baby, he's going to sign a 20-week abortion ban. He not only voted for this ban, by the way, he co-sponsored it. He put his name on it. Hey man, look, if you want to be pro-life, and if you really believe that when the sperm meets the egg and as soon as they merge, bam, that's a complete human being, right? With full rights and everything. Okay, that's fine. Practice that in your own home, right? But don't go out there and use your power to deny people their own choices over their own bodies. If you're going to hold that position, at the very least you could do is just practice what you preach. Okay. One more. Let's see here. Okay, let's do that. All throughout the Democratic primary, we heard the South was very, very conservative. Nobody, for example, would vote for a liberal, a progressive in the South. I mean, especially somebody who was running on a somewhat liberal platform. They think that, no, in the South, you've got to be super conservative because everybody in the South is super conservative. Well, apparently they're wrong, as Birmingham had just elected an Our Revolution-backed mayor. Now, this on the picture is Randall Woodfin. Now, he's a 36-year-old former Board of Education president who was endorsed by the Bernie-backed campaign group Our Revolution. Now, he ran against actually a very popular incumbent mayor named William Bell. Now, he was elected back in 2012. Now, a poll released in early August found that 57% of the city's residents thought he was actually doing an excellent or a good job. So, again, he was doing very, very well in the polls. So what the hell happened? Well, according to Z. Jelani, who's been doing a great job of tracking these smaller races for The Intercept, said that Woodfin decided to run on a populist platform. Now, how did that work out for him? Well, he actually defeated Bell in a runoff with 58% of the votes. Like I said, he ran as a populist. He was endorsed by Our Revolution and also had one member of the Bernie Sanders campaign on his staff, helping him out. Not only that, but Woodfin had also had the support of the Working Families Party. In fact, 125 Working Families Party volunteers contacted 22,000 voters by text and phone alone, helping to push Woodfin over the top. According to Joe Dinkin, national spokesperson for the Working Families Party, Randall Woodfin ran on the idea that the people of Birmingham have a right to demand a government that truly works for all of its people, and that a city can provide opportunity and lift those up who've been left behind. Woodfin is part of a wave of local candidates around the nation who are running on bold, transformative, progressive visions and winning. Now, bold progressive, sort of in the case of Woodfin at least. Jelani notes that Woodfin's platform is by itself far from radical in post-2016 Democratic politics. Some of the things that he wants to do is he wants to make community college free for students who graduate from Birmingham's high schools. That's a decent policy. Hey, he wants to expand pre-K, invest in public transit and job training, Now, one thing that I disagree with him on is his plan to boost the city's police forces. Now, okay. I'll get to that in a minute, I guess. Because he has actually a pretty good reason for wanting to boost the police forces, even though I disagree with the policy itself. But look, overall, it's not massively progressive, but it's not really conservative. It's actually kind of middle of the road. But it's the middle of the road populist, because he's actually saying that, no, I actually do want to help you with some of these policies, which is not what corporate Democrats do. Corporate Democrats do, all they try to push for is, well, we're going to do business-friendly stuff, and that will help you. Wonderful. Now, it turns out that people actually like it when you run on policies that it might actually help them. Who knew? Now, what's even more interesting of this pairing between the Working Families Party, Our Revolution, and Woodfin is that Woodfin actually backed Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders in the primary. So this is Our Revolution reaching out and saying, hey, man, look, we know you supported Hillary. We don't really care. At this point, you're a more progressive mayor than Bell, so we're actually going to support you because we actually care about policy. Now, what's funny is that Sanders backers, a lot of Sanders backers are going, hey, we got this guy, this progressive, elected. What are the Hillary Clinton folks doing? What are they talking about? All they're still saying is, oh, Bernie Sanders and progressives, Our Revolution, you're just trying to destroy the Democratic Party. No, it actually looks like we're helping the Democratic Party win. Because, again, we actually care about policy, and we don't care about just being Team Democrat, okay? Now, again, his policies, like I said, are, for the most part, good policy. I'm iffy on the police part, and but I understand why. And here's his reasons. Birmingham has the 7th highest homicide rate of cities over 100,000 people. He recently lost his nephew during the course of the campaign. So he was shot and killed. Now, the boy's father, Woodfin's older brother, was also killed in a shooting 5 years before that. So I get it. I understand. He's like, well, I think more police would make us safer. I think we need to get more to the root of crime, which is, I think in a lot of ways, economic inequality is what, and lack of opportunity, which breeds crime. But that's just me. Point is, you're running some decent policies, and guess what? You might actually win. And on the policies like free college, job training, infrastructure, wonderful. That's how you win. Run on it. Now, Woodfin isn't the only person that has actually run in the South and has won. For example, you had Jackson, Mississippi, the state's largest city, recently elected Chokwe Labamba Jr. Now, he is a young populist who has vowed to make Jackson the most radical city on the planet. Not only that, but you have Vincent Fort. Now, he's a former state Senate Democratic whip, and who's also been a longtime foe of Wall Street and the city's Democratic establishment. He's running, and he's being backed by Our Revolution and by Bernie Sanders himself. And of course, since he's been in the race, he seems to already have an impact. Atlanta recently voted to raise the wages of city workers to $15 an hour and to decriminalize small amounts of marijuana. Those are two issues Fort has actually that are very close to Fort in his campaign. So, should he succeed, you will have the largest cities in Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia be run by populist mayors. And that is what a political revolution looks like. It does not start at the top. It actually starts at the bottom and the local levels. Now, for all the Democratic, corporate Democrats, I should say, in the mainstream media, for all the people who are members of both of those organizations, if you want to sit there and sneer at Bernie Sanders and Our Revolution and Nina Turner, that's fine. But what are they actually doing? Are they actually helping Democrats get elected? No, they're getting their asses handed to them by Trump, while Our Revolution is actually starting to win in the South. So maybe you should get up off your ass, stop sneering, and actually start helping. It's not too late, Democrats. Jump on board, and we might actually show you how to win. Okay. That's it. that's all I got for you guys. I do want to read a super chat here that was sent in by Pat Hacker. Mace, this is for you. $2 for me. Thank you. And Mace, you better say thank you as well. I'm watching you, dude. You're weird. But anyway, thank you, Pat. Like I said, you better say thanks as well. I see you did. Good. All right. Thanks to everybody as well who's watching. Make sure to like and share. Go to our videos, like and share those as well. Send those out. Thanks to everybody who supports us on Patreon. Patreon.com/TYTNation if you want to support the show. That's it. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Love you guys. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation. See you tomorrow.